I'm Don Baker, and this here's my reflection of 45 years of snowboarding. I kind of want to start with my first love, which was surfing. I was in eighth grade. I told my dad I really wanted to surf. We didn't live that close to the beach. It was about an hour away. But during the summer, he would take the family out there, a few times. So that summer, um, I'm not sure if it was around my birthday, but he took me to a surf shop to pick out a used surfboard, and I found there was a standout board. I mean, I grew up watching like Hawaii Five O, the intro, the wave on the North Shores, and looking at magazines. I was just inspired, by those images. And so O'Neill Surf Shop in Santa Cruz, they had a used lightning bolt. It was a big wave gun at the time. It was over 7 feet, single fin, very sharp nose and tail, very pointed on both ends. uh, Nice yellow lightning bolts, on the top and bottom. And it was actually had the shaper's name on it. I do remember Tom Eberly's name was on it, and I was just so excited to try it out, And my dad would take me to this little sandy beach called the Sunny Cove in Santa Cruz. Not a great place to learn to surf, and definitely the board I chose, was not good for learning either. So, trying to ride that board on these closeout beach break waves was quite a learning experience. Nearly scalped myself with the big fin and sharp tail bouncing back towards my head after a wipeout, and I quickly decided to sell that board and actually purchased a foam Mori boogie board, and which was definitely more ideal for riding the waves at that beach, and so that following winter, after I bought this boogie board, I was invited to a snow trip, and it was a youth group snow trip. There must have been a couple dozen kids that got to go, and they split us into two groups. So one group that was either had their skis or were going to rent skis got to go to the ski resort, and the rest of us got to go to this toboggan hill with we could either bring sleds, inner tubes, saucers, snow toys like that. And I had brought my bodyboard, and I didn't have much snow gear. I had some snow gloves, but I was wearing jeans. I think I had a insulated jacket, and the closest thing I had to boots were some cowboy boots. So like I doubled up my socks and wore these cowboy boots. So up at the top of the sled hill, it's very icy and bumpy. People had been riding it, and it had frozen over at night, and it was quite a challenge, especially trying to stand up on the boogie board. I'd wrap the leash around my hand and just pull up the tension to keep the nose up, and just standing on that board, try to ride down this icy slope. And it was kind of like riding a bull. I was getting bounced and bucked around, just holding on for dear life, seeing if I could ride, for seconds, see how far down I could go. But I had so much fun that day. I knew I was a snowboarder for life. Then that was back when I was in eighth grade. So, during my high school years, I built a hill board. I handmade it out of materials that were at my grandparents' garage and backyard. Made it out of plywood and sheet metal for the nose and leather foot straps for bindings, a little leash so if I, fell, my board wouldn't go all the way down the hill without me. And enjoyed, really honing my skills in both, riding the waves and bodyboarding and hillboarding over those high school years. On the hillboard, I would ride dirt, mud, sand, sometimes sand, and the rare occasions that I'd get to take it in the snow. So now after high school, I turned 18 and I moved actually closer to ocean location, moved to Monterey. And in a surf shop there, I saw my first snowboard. It was this board. This here's the BURTON Performer. It's an all-wood snowboard. It's got these aluminum fins at the back, and it had some plastic bindings with some high backs and toe and heel straps, which haven't survived, the test of time. But this board, it's got the registration number P5-11008. Here, shaped by the BURTON staff, handmade in Vermont, USA, patent pending. So, I was super stoked to get this board. My stepdad, who I was staying with at the time in Monterey, he bought the BURTON Backhill. They really had two boards on display at the surf shop. I saved up, bought the Performer. He bought the Backhill. And, we had fun riding on the rare occasions. Again, it doesn't snow anywhere near Monterey. But, once or twice a year, we get a light dusting on some of the highest elevations nearby. So I got to, take a few runs there. And then we did do a family snow trip in Yosemite. And I got to bring this to Badger Pass. That was a little ski resort. The lifts weren't operating. There was only a few inches of snow on the ground, but I would hike up and had some very memorable runs on this BURTON Performer. And so back in Monterey, though, there was some nearby sand dunes. There was a little town called Sand City. It was several miles away, but I could ride my bicycle. I could either kind of makeshift a strap, for this snowboard and sling it over my shoulder while I'm, riding my bike and going across town. And this sand dune was really steep. It started off near the side of a freeway, and then it went down all the way to where the ocean crashes on the narrow beach at the bottom. And great spot. Sometimes people would fly remote gliders and in the area. But we would, actually, I had a friend that also got a wooden snowboard in the area. And so we would ride that. My step didn't ride his backhill much on the sand dunes. And actually, that's why his board's in much more pristine condition. Mine definitely took a lot of abuse. And there was one area on the sand dune, because we were scoping out different lines and different slopes to ride. And it must have been a place where people dumped either trash and especially glass bottles and stuff in the past. So what happened is, heck, some glass wasn't going to slow me down from charging down the hill. There was actually shards of broken glass sticking out of the sand surface. And, you really didn't want to fall or drag your hands because of the sharp glass. So I definitely, some of the deepest gouges in the bottom of this board were from the shards of glass. So I definitely, I didn't baby this board. I abused it, and had so much fun riding it. But then, another season passed, and all of a sudden the P-Tex bottom and metal edge boards, started coming out. And so, these primitive all wood boards, were more of a thing of the past. So I purchased a BURTON Elite 150. I still wanted kind of a short board, maneuverable. I was already, I've been catching air and, and doing some small little maneuvers, on my hill board and on this BURTON Performer. So, I definitely thought the Elite 150 was the next board for me. And, took that to some back hills. And that's about the same time that some Tahoe ski resorts started allowing snowboarding at a very limited basis. We actually, all the snowboarders had to, definitely, at least for that season, it might have been 2 seasons, but you had to pass a skills test before you could even purchase a lift ticket. So you'd have to hike up the mountain. They had instructors, or some of them I think were just ski instructors. There wasn't a whole lot of early snowboarding instructors, but there was a few. And depending on if you could turn toe edge, heel edge, come to a controlled stop, okay, you could get a basic lift pass. It would limit you to the beginner runs. They had other tests, so if you wanted to do intermediate runs or even advanced runs, they had different levels of testing. So this is a time, really, definitely, that my younger brother Derek was snowboarding with me, and he was renting a snowboard during that first season, but to pass the test, he asked to borrow my Elite 150 because it was more maneuverable, it was easier to pass the test. He was renting a BURTON Cruiser 165 that was just a little more difficult passing those tests. So, it was a unique time. Shortly after that, maybe a season or so, that's when both my brother and I bought our first Sim snowboards. And so I bought Sim Switchblade. There's a replica board here in the back that my youngest son still rides to this day. But I rode my Switchblade till the P-Tex delaminated and peeled off. Same thing kind of happened to my BURTON 150 Elite. I shredded that thing till it delaminated and the P-Tex failed. So, but my brother got the Terry Kidwell, Pro model, and he got it. It was all black, had the cool, colored Sims logos, much cooler tail shape and nose shape, and I was pretty envious. That board was sick. It was, definitely an upgrade from what I was riding. So we rode a lot for many years, and even at the point where I used credit cards. I got into credit card debt just to try to fill my urge of snowboarding trips, and it was well worth it. Thinking of those memories, that was worth getting into a little bit of debt to enjoy the snowboarding. So, my brother and I, we had a pretty unique style on the mountain. I had many years of experience, and he had a few years and was definitely progressing. I think we fed off each other. So I would describe our riding style as all mountain racing with synchronized terrain park jumping. So we would really, every other run, we would take turns leading, and then it was just a full-on race to the bottom, including going through terrain parks, which, we didn't stop. If it was open, we would hit the jumps. If it wasn't, we would go around. We didn't really want to get in anyone's way, but we weren't going to wait in line on the mountain. We saved that for the bottom to get on the chairlift. So yeah, high speed. Really, a lot of times we were riding so close that we were going off, medium-sized kickers simultaneously, and just sticking it and really racing each other down to the bottom. So, I can't really share my story without, talking about snowboarding with my younger brother. So, we definitely had great times doing that. And I do want to fast forward to my more recent, snowboard. But along with my style, I need to kind of mention just overall, when I rode a skateboard, and I've rode a skateboard since even before I started surfing and boogie boarding, hill boarding, and snowboarding. From the earliest days, just sidewalk cruising, till later on street skating and ramps and stuff. But I'm a goofy foot rider, but I also kick Mongo. So I'm one of those rare, bizarre skaters. It's goofy Mongo. And for those that don't know, well, everybody should know that most people know goofy foot is your right foot forward. So that's not that uncommon. But a Mongo skateboarder kicks with their front foot. So I leave my back foot, on the skateboard, and I kick with my front foot, and then I put it in place and I reposition my back foot. And so for snowboarding, every time that you're in the flat areas, either getting on the lift or getting off, when only your front foot is strapped in, I've got to kick with my back foot, with my back leg. And it's super unnatural. I mean, to the point that I just have difficulty. I do kick on beyond my toe edge. So that's awkward. I know a lot of snowboarders that I see kick behind their heel edge. So it's just really awkward and unnatural for me. And really, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I'm going to set my BURTON Performer aside and grab my Gilson snowboard. So this is a board that I purchased 8 years ago. I did some research, and I liked some of the design, the unique design features that Gilson was coming out with. And the big one is obviously their 3D base. Now, I know a lot of people aren't fans of Gilson snowboards or 3D base, their step edges, all of that. And definitely even more recently this season, those haters are more vocal on social media than ever before. I just wanted to share my own experience. Everybody's got a different style of riding, and and there's things they like or don't like. So I just wanted to be open and honest with my experiences, having ridden a Gilson snowboard, for 8 years. And this one, and it may be kind of hard to see, it has a powder channel. So this here's recessed in the middle. It's pretty wide, and it goes all the way from the nose to the tail. The step edges are also, it's a recessed edge all the way around. And so really there's two raised sections on the bottom of the snowboard where It, it's a little higher than the steel edge or the base of the powder channel. So I'm not sure really if these are showing up on the videos, but I wanted to talk about that because that's really a unique design. And so for me, the bad part is I'm already very awkward kicking on a snowboard. When I have my front foot strapped in, I'm trying to get around the base of the lift, or once I get off the top of the lift before I get my feet strapped in, it's really awkward. So this board, it's even amplified because the edges are not directly on the contact surface, and that powder channel means there's a lot less, like I said, contact surface touching the snow in those flat situations. So less contact surface means it's going to be more slippery. It's going to be loose and really slidey. And so, that's definitely, a disadvantage. But, out of the whole time I'm snowboarding, at a ski resort, it's a minimal amount of time. Most of my time is top to bottom, hopefully getting long runs, so the majority of my time on the snowboard, I'm strapped into the bindings with both feet. And that's where I feel these advantages of the Gilson snowboard really play in, especially to my style of snowboarding. So I would describe my style, along with the history of riding and racing with, against my younger brother. I tend to ride, all mountain fast, but I like slashing, loose slashing on natural and man-made transitions, kind of like surf style slashing. So that's kind of my style. And this board just once you're getting speed going, it's effortless just to slash. The board feels super loose, and I just love that because, and especially the older I get, it becomes less effortless to ride a board that's loose. But because I love the high speed, especially on open groomed, trails, the high speed carving, it just, once you get past that step edge and you engage on the metal edge, it just grabs, and the control and speed of carving is incredible. So I've never quite felt a board that felt so loose and surfy style in a combination of high speed carving. It just blew me away. These are like my first impressions of getting on this board, and it almost changed snowboarding for me. It definitely excited me all over again to what I fell in love with, 40 years prior. And so there's another really unique design to the Gilson snowboards, and it's really the flex that occurs in the middle between the feet. So most of my older snowboards were very stiff in between the feet, and then the flex was really between the outer foot to the nose or tail. That's where the board, my older boards, have most of their flex. And now this board, this Gilson, is more stiff outside of the feet to the tips, and more flexible in the middle. And I do, on occasion, I definitely like to hit some steep moguls, and it's a lot of work, especially as you get up there in age. It gets harder and harder to maneuver a snowboard around. So how I felt this difference was that transition going from toe edge to heel edge and vice versa was made easier with the flex in this part of the middle part of the board. Now, again, this is my opinion. This is my experiences. There may be others out there that disagree with it, and that's okay. Feel free to post comments. You can, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Just say whatever's on your mind. That's okay. Everybody, has a right to speak. And so I just wanted to cover that stuff. Definitely. So, I think about my favorite memories of snowboarding, as I reflect on 45 years back. And the standout memory is the one, there's plenty of powder days, but there was like one epic day where the powder it averaged like waist deep, just the softest, driest snow that you couldn't make a snowball if you tried. Oh, that day was epic. The ride up there the night before, couldn't hardly make it. The chains broke. They were just slamming the side of my car and ripped the molding off. And we happened to be in front of the snowplow. So, it was crazy driving that night. I couldn't pull over. I would have been stuck. We just had to gas it and make it up to the mountain. But, that next day, I hit powder that, I'm sure many snowboarders have hit, way more days like this, and it may be a lot more common, but for me, it was really special. There was a run that, was double black diamond chute, able to shoot through that, and then it opened up into a big meadow where actually the powder started rushing up to my chest. It was going from kind of waist deep on average, but just hit this one section where it just rolled up all the way to my armpits, and just my arms, shoulders, and head is like above this snow for a ways until it got out of that, and then it's back down to waist deep, turns and stuff. But that was so epic that now I'm quickly approaching 60 years old. That's only a couple months away, and I start to think, that's I want another memory like that, in my 60s. So I purchased a dream board. It may be my personal last brand new snowboard. I'm not sure. I'm really happy with this board as an all mountain board, but I need every advantage as I age that the equipment will provide, so that I can experience snowboarding, hopefully with less energy and effort involved, just the reality of growing old. So that's where I want to share, for all of those that have stayed and listened to my story, thank you. I wanted to do basically an unboxing. We'll unwrap my new snowboard. I haven't opened it up yet. So let me set this aside and let's get started with that. So, as you can see on the packaging, this here's a Gilson, and I think we'll start with opening it up this side. Yeah, I'm really excited. I I've been looking at this board for many years. Actually, even before I bought my 160 Pioneer, which I knew that was a more practical board, you know, because of the conditions I typically ride. But I wanted to get a powder board. I've never owned a powder specific board. And so I finally got one. And this is the Gilson Fly. Yeah, it's a 156 centimeter. It's got the big V-tail. This here, take off that. This has a powder. Get this all the way off. So this has a powder channel, and a pretty large one that, you know, displaces the snow. Of course, a wider nose to give you lift, and then the V-tail, so it gives you control in the soft stuff. It's also has definitely a further back stance. You know, and I have to say, more recently, riding powder on my 160 Pioneer was a lot harder for me. You know, there was times I went over the handlebars and I flipped, you know, and got stuck and struggled. And I think part of that more centered stance in the soft powder was definitely took a lot more work and energy. So that's why now, you know, I'll ride this for the first time, you know, after I turned 60 years old. And I think this is really going to open up my ability to ride the soft powder a lot better. And so, yeah, super excited, and definitely wanted to share that with you. But what I did on my Gilson Pioneer is, right when it was brand new, you know, with the 3D base, I was like, well, this is going to be a pain to hot wax. You know, I've always hot waxed my boards. I mean, there's times where I've had shops do it and stuff, but definitely more times than that, I've done it myself. I wax my kids' boards. I've taught them, you know, how to wax their own boards and stuff like that. But, you know, with this, I did some research, and, 8 years ago, there was a product by DPS. It was the Phantom Base Treatment. And, you know, so before I even took a run on it, I removed the factory wax, I stripped that off, and the Phantom Base Treatment at that time was a 2-part process. It took like 8 hours of curing, either in the sunlight or under UV light. It was quite a process. I live in the forest, where even in my yard, I don't hardly ever get 8 hours of consistent sunlight. So, and depending on the season, you know, it could be far, far less than that. So I did a lot of the curing here in the garage under these fluorescent lights. And so I'm going to do the same thing here on my new one. So I purchased the Phantom Glide. Now this is a much new, improved version than the product by the same company that I applied 8 years ago. So this is a single part process, and it takes a lot less of the cure time. I have to read through the instructions and stuff, and actually I'll have to do that like on the computer, because, you know, obviously it doesn't give a whole lot of information in here. But I think it's like, you know, it's like an hour or two of cure time, and it's a single part. And if it holds up, as good as that. I mean, I've never waxed that. Now you can apply wax on top of the base treatment. I never really needed to. My board, in all kinds of conditions, just felt slippery. I mean, you know, yeah, if you were racing or something, it might not be the most ideal, but just for general riding, it never got slow or grippy on me at all. So again, I'll be using the Phantom Glide directly on my new powder board, and I'm just super excited not only to, you know, show my new board, but share my experience and stories with you all. So thank you very much.